Good morning, everyone. Terry, I see that you're on. Excited to have you here. Welcome to our first Droplets of Wisdom. Thank you so much. I'm very excited. We are going to be talking about marketing yourself well. You have an amazing panelist of ladies here to give you fantastic direction and advice. For all of you who do not know me, my name is Pearl Fulani with Lady Jewel, and I plan events, which has been interesting during the time we find ourselves. So I was thinking, how could I be a resource, utilize my planning skills for people and bring you some helpful information, and Droplets of Wisdom was formed from that. So this is going to be a continuing series. Again, we're starting this series with marketing yourself well. We're going to be talking about three big areas, talking about resumes, personal brands, and interviewing. You ladies all have vast wisdom and knowledge in much broader areas. Those are the areas I requested for our time today. Before I introduce you to them, I just wanted to do some quick housekeeping. Kind of below your screen, about in the middle, you'll see a button called Ask a Question. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in there. And if you're joining us later, and I'll remind you again as more people are joining, if you see a question in that box that you like, just go ahead and like it instead of rewriting it again, because that will let us know when we get to the question and answer portion of our time together that that's a question that you really want an answer to. If you put the questions in the chat, it's going to get missed. I don't mean to be harsh about it. You guys, please use the chat to converse with one another. But as far as asking a question, there's going to get missed because we just have a lot to get through today, and I don't want to let you know that if you put a question in the chat, we'll be able to get to it. So if you really have a question, please use the Ask Question button right there below. All right, we're going to get started. I'm going to introduce our panelists here, starting here with Hillary. And Hillary's going to be talking to us about resumes, but Hillary, you do a lot more. So could you give us a quick summation of who you are?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me today, Pearl. I'm really excited to be here and chat with everybody. I am a career and entrepreneurial consultant. I opened my own business, HiConsulting, in 2017. So we just celebrated 3 years in February. I work with individuals across all career levels. So whether you're just graduating and looking for your first job, or you're a senior executive looking to make a transition to the C-suite, I'm here to help you with putting together your resume, preparing for your interviews, putting together that plan to land that next role. I'm also very active in the local community, so I participate a lot with Local First, Phoenix Startup Week, and I'm also on the board for AZ Talent Co-op. When I'm not here in the office, I'm typically outside, either riding a dirt bike, hiking with the dogs, or out on the lake.
I love that you're dirt bike. That's awesome. That's fantastic. And that's how Hillary and I actually met, was through Startup Week at Phoenix a couple of weeks. I wish, a couple of years ago, being on the team. So the next person is Ms. Tisha. She's fantastic. She's going to be talking about personal brands, but as you will learn very quickly, she does a lot more.
Thank you so much, Pearl. It's great to be here on your very first event, and congrats to you for launching this. Especially right now, everybody needs to be learning. And hi, ladies, and everyone else that's joining. My name is Tisha Marie Pelletier, and I am the Chief Experience Officer and President of Tisha Marie Enterprises. And my entrepreneurial journey actually starts way back in 2004. I have run a marketing company, an event management company like Pearl, so I know all the ins and outs of this. And also was a leader for and ran a mom entrepreneurs group called the Mommy Club, which was a national mastermind for mom and women in business. So definitely have held a lot of different roles. And then in 2015, I suffered what I like to call my identity crisis meltdown and decided that maybe I don't want to be doing any of these things anymore, which really catapulted me into building my own personal brand. So I believe that I definitely walk the talk in everything that I share and everything that I teach. I'm also a mentor for Arizona State University. I mentor their entrepreneurial students. So I love helping people get their start and take that vision of theirs that's in their head and make it happen. I am a podcaster. I run a podcast called The Success Over Struggle, as well as host Social Connect Phoenix, which is a live networking event where people are meeting people first and not business titles, a very unique, genuine setting. And I'm an author, so I've written a couple of books on just even my personal stories of struggle and success and everything in between. And as far as what I do in my free time, I'm a mom of 2. I have a kiddo, Caleb, who's 11, a daughter, Ellie, who's 8, and I have a household of dogs. 1 boxer and 2 pugs, so I am always on my feet. There's always something going on in that house. So thank you for being on today.
Oh my goodness, dogs, animals, and we have an interesting relationship. I'm not against pets. I just decided that they don't do well in my home necessarily. But I've gotten much better. I used to be that, because I had some bad experiences, that I used to be that person that if you had a dog, I'd be stressed coming into your house. No, we just look at each other and acknowledge them. And then we have the lovely Miss Sherrie, and she has amazing 20+ years experience in HR. She's going to be talking about interviewing, but again, just as our other 2 ladies have a vast wealth of experience. So Sherrie, welcome.
Thank you so much, Pearl. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody today. As Pearl said, I'm Sherrie Brenner, and I am the president of Sherrie Brenner Coaching. And a little bit about my background. I spent 31 years in various human resources capacities for one of our favorite corporations, Target. I know, our favorite store. And throughout that career, the piece that I just absolutely loved the most was to help people achieve their dream job and to help them ascend through the corporation while maintaining work-life balance, because I saw a lot of that not happening. So I kind of became the go-to girl when it came to helping people prepare for their interviews. It was amazing to me how humble people can be and how difficult it was for them to recall some of the really fantastic things that they did in terms of contribution to the corporation. So I developed a pretty easy tactical technique to help people really make sure that they're able to put their very, very best foot forward. And my track record is really strong. So fast forward through that 31-year career, I was able to retire from Target Corporation. I can't believe it. It's going to be 2 years in December. And that's when, I know, it's incredible. And that's when I attained my life coaching certification, and I am a professional life coach, and I've just really fallen into this niche of helping people prepare for interviews. So whether it's a campus grad or whether it's somebody who's going after a significant internal promotion, or if it's somebody who's displaced, I'm helping people craft their stories, remember their stories, put their best foot forward, and achieve that role that they're going after. Personally, I'm originally from Michigan. My husband and I moved to sunny, fabulous Arizona in 2005, so no more snow for me, yay. And but I do recently miss traveling because my family, who I'm very close with, is all over the country. So this has been a little bit of a challenging time because typically we're able to be with each other a little bit more than we are right now. But I'm sure that will come to pass soon. Pleasure to be with everybody today.
Well, thank you for joining us. And yes, hopefully that will be the case, because I'm like you, I love to travel. I have 2 of my siblings live out of state, so I usually visit one another. I have one that lives here. My parents live here, so that's been helpful. But I miss being able to see other parts of the world, country, and the world. All right, well, we're going to just jump right in. As you can tell, again, these ladies have amazing, vast experience. I have some pre-prepared questions for them that we're going to start with, and then about 30 minutes in, any questions you have, we'll open it up to the audience for question and answer. If you see my eyes darting all over the place, don't worry, it's not you, it's me. I'm looking at my notes and making sure that everything's going well, so ignore the eyes. But we're going to go ahead and start with Hillary. And I want to jump right in. My first question was, it's been a while since I created a resume. Yep. What has changed? What has stayed the same? Is it the same? What should I be thinking of? Because this is the first time in a long time that I've had to put together my resume.
That's a fantastic question, Pearl, and it's one that a lot of people are experiencing right now. So the thing with resumes is that they've changed quite a bit in the last about 5 years. It used to be that a resume was including your overall experience. So from the time you started working all the way up until your most current role, you listed every position, and you wanted to avoid showing things like, work experience gaps or time gaps. What's really changed is the introduction of applicant tracking systems. You guys will hear me talk about that quite a bit in any resume writing workshop that we do. These are the background systems that are actually scanning your resume before it even gets in the hands of a human being. So we're really writing for technology and people today. So when you start to outline your resume, you want to keep in mind that there's also a technology component to it now. And the most critical thing to do is to target your resume based on the job that you're applying for. So for example, if you're applying for a marketing position, you want to include as much of your marketing experience in there as you possibly can, and perhaps redact or omit some of the things that aren't directly related to marketing positions. For example, if you were a veterinary technician that maybe doesn't have a lot of marketing type tasks related to it.
Okay, well, that's great. We're cutting in and out a little bit, Hillary, but I think we got most of that. So your biggest thing was we're writing as much for human beings as we are for technology in today's day and age. So you have to be targeted, understand that, and make sure that when you're crafting your resume, you're using very specific language for the position that you are applying for, not necessarily a rundown of everything that you've done. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, you did. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And when you say tracking system, can we break it down a little bit more for if you were a 5-year-old? What does that mean?
Yes. So the acronym is ATS. That stands for Applicant Tracking System. These systems are being widely used across organizations of all size. So small mom and pop companies have access to them. Recruiters have access to them, and so do the large corporations. Especially with today's time and place of all of the virtual recruiting that's happening, the systems are even more widespread than they were before. And so what these systems do is they look at your resume for particular keywords, and these have been identified by the hiring manager or the recruiter that is responsible for bringing in candidates for that position. So they might be looking for something like leadership, communication. If it's a technical role, they're probably looking for particular software programs. So you want to analyze the description that you're reading. The words that are frequently used, identified as being preferred qualifications, and then use the exact language in your resume as well, so that you get what's called a high match rate. And so it's saying that the words you have in your resume match on the job description. We put it together and say this would be a good person.
All right, would you repeat that last sentence? I'm sorry, you broke up just a little bit, so I just want to make sure I hear it.
Sure. So you want the exact phrases to be in your resume and in the job description, and then the tracking system will put those two together and say this is an ideal person to call. So it sets you up for that interview.
Okay, great. Well, thinking of interviews, I know in the last few years I've done interviews where it's not even an interview. It's basically I put in my resume and then I get asked questions. It's like the pre-interview. So Sherrie, have you seen that where it's questions before you even get anywhere near a human being? And how do you even prepare for that?
It wasn't really something that we leveraged at Target Corporation, but I have heard about it. And I think that before you submit a resume, if you've done your interview preparation, then you're going to be well prepared to respond to any kind of a question that is thrown your way. Just be confident, remember what you do well, and always be honest.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm thinking, okay, so we're matching, we're building our resumes in one sense to technology as much as a human being, but then how do you make sure that you, the person, doesn't get lost So I'm going to you, Tisha. Like, I mean, first of all, what's personal brand? You know, everyone has heard that's kind of been a big buzzword for the last few years. So everyone has different understandings of what personal brand is. But how would you define that to someone? And then how do you take that concept and make sure you're adding it in, keeping in mind that, hey, I have to keep these keywords in, these key phrases in to make sure that my resume does this, but I don't lose myself.
So for personal branding, I deal a lot with business owners that are trying to stand out because they're in a sea of just saturation. They're in markets that there's so many people doing the exact same thing. I mean, Pearl, how many event planners are there? So it really is key to figure out what makes you stand out in a crowd and how are you showing up personally, professionally, publicly, privately, all of those things, and making sure that you are keeping that same persona every time, everywhere. You're not changing the game depending on who you're talking to and so forth. So I really try to strive to tell people that being your authentic self is the best thing that you can be, because so many of us try to change who we are depending on the scenario, and it becomes uncomfortable. And if you're talking to employers, for instance, I would bet that they could see right through that too. So really defining, like going through those steps, and these are things that I've shared, you know, in the resources, but really going through those steps of identifying like what's your purpose, what are your passions, because we're not all the same type of people. There's things that I like and there's things that you like, and you know, and we need to own that, and that's how we start to show up too.
I absolutely agree with you. I the other part of my business is I also help women specifically build their personal brand, especially if they're just going back to the workforce after years of being out. And that's the first thing I'm going to tell them, that we're going to focus on the personal part of personal brand. You have to know who you are first, because then we're going to present that to the world. But if you don't know that, if you don't have the answers and questions to that, can we build something? Absolutely, but it's no longer authentic to you, and it's going to feel like you're putting a mask on instead of, hey, here's my inside, now I'm sharing it with the rest of the world.
Well, it's just like it's like I say that I'm a very infectious energy, high enthusiasm type of girl, but if every time you see me I'm subdued and just, you know, I'm confusing you. So I want to make sure that I'm showing up the right way, because then what ultimately happens? You say, oh, Tisha's the girl that is this. Like, I've already put that in your head because I show up consistently the same way in my voice, in my videos, and everything that I'm doing in person. And I think with employers, if we're taking it of how are you going to get in and interviewing, they want to see that you are a human, that they can connect with you. It's really not just about here's everything on paper that I've done, but how do you show up? Can we have you as part of our culture? How are you going to interact with the people that we have? And are you a good fit depending on who you are and how you show up?
Oh, absolutely. Sherrie, Hillary, similar thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. I can think of, oh my gosh, thousands of interviews that I facilitated over the course of years. And when somebody was being disingenuous or trying to portray a skill that they truly didn't possess, it was obvious. Their body language would become tense. They were uncomfortable. When somebody was genuine and just spoke their truth, it was much, much easier to assess whether they were a match for the role. And there was much better chemistry when they were genuine. I couldn't agree more.
The same. I couldn't agree more either. One of the first conversations that we have when we're starting to build out a resume is that, we don't lie. You don't pad the information. You don't want to sound like you're something that you're not, because it will come through in that next phase of the process.
Right. Well, there's a question actually, the question from Sherrie, that I think works well. She just asked the question of how important is a cover letter? And so I thought I would throw that out to you first, Hillary, and then Tisha, Sherrie, if you want to jump in as well. But how important is that classic cover letter? Is that still a useful thing?
Well, since you're throwing the question to me first, I'm going to answer honestly, because we're talking about being, our personal brands right now. I really think it depends on the situation. A cover letter is viewed as being a little bit more traditional, so you have to think about the role that you're applying for. If they're requesting a cover letter, absolutely, that cover letter is now critical, and it should be part of your applicant packet that you're submitting. But a lot of the younger companies, and I don't mean, employees, but the younger aged companies that have only been around for a few years, their hiring processes can look a little bit different, and they don't necessarily care about having a cover letter. They would rather have something a little bit more unique. So I think it really depends on the situation. And if you are, going back to you internally, if you are the type of person that would view as a cover letter as being important, then you should have one and put it together. The most important thing about a cover letter is that it shouldn't summarize the resume. It should bring some other type of value to the conversation. It should talk about why you're a good fit culturally. It's a place to really talk about some of those more personal things. Ladies, do you agree or disagree?
I completely agree with you personally. Again, when I was facilitating interviews, one of the most precious commodities in the working environment is time. And I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest, that there's a lot of time for people to even thoroughly review a resume, much less a cover letter. So I would say put your energy into your resume and put your energy into your interview prep, so that when you're having that interaction, whether it's on a platform like this, a phone interview, or in person, that you can really wow the person when you have their undivided attention.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to agree with both of you in all regards. I think that it really depends on the situation. And I know for me, I'm not interviewing, but I am interviewing if I'm trying to get a client. It's the same thing, right? As a freelancer, as a contractor, so putting your best foot forward. It really depends on how you feel. I've written cover letters where I've added a little bit more personality to it, and that's helped me get to that next level. But I agree with Sherrie that, if you get to that point where you're in front of that person and they're making a decision between you and several other people, this is where you really turn it on and you shine. And absolutely, I think it was Hillary that said it, you cannot, or no, it was Sherrie, but you cannot be disingenuous and you cannot be lying, absolutely not, about anything that you think you do, or if you don't have it, don't talk about it. People see straight through it.
Well, you would never want to put yourself in a position where you said that you had a skill that you don't.
Right. Because
if you get that job and then your employer is expecting you to be able to execute that skill, if you can't, it's going to be problematic for both of you. You want to make sure that you're putting yourself in a situation that is going to leverage your strengths, what you're great at. That's what you're going to be happiest at and most successful at.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you, ladies. We're done with mentioning that. Sherrie, I hope that was helpful. So moving on, let's talk about very, very practically. Again, because we're talking about people that there's going to be a mix of people that are, well, if they're recent grads, they may or may not even really have work experience. If they haven't had to put a resume together in a long time, and then there's people that have been out of the workforce for a while. So what do you do with gaps, or the fact that you have little experience? Like, how do you build an effective resume that has these keywords, that's all these things? How do you show the experience that you may not have, or it's been a long time since you've had that experience? Let's start with you, Kuenn.
There's a couple different ways that you can go about it. Typically, the format that I recommend is starting with your contact information at the top. Very important to include your contact information. And then going into a little bit of like an executive summary. And this doesn't have to be very long. It can be about 50 words, but that really highlights some of the things that are included in the job description. And then right below that, do 9 to 12 bullets where you're calling out specific key traits. So that can be your communication. It can be whatever skill it is that maybe you don't have experience with overall, or you have to maybe look farther back in your career history. That way you can bring it to the forefront and still have it highlighted and visible. To talk about building resumes, I'm just going to use my notepad right here. And they hold it like this, right? And they're typically about to their thumb, and you have that far to make that positive impression and get them to continue reading your resume to really bring you in for an interview. As Sherrie was saying, time is precious, right? So a lot of resumes may not even be read all the way through. So you want to make sure that those key points are right at the top of the resume. that's a way that you can bring some of that stuff to the forefront that maybe is, a decade or so old, but still relevant. If you're returning to the workforce, that gets a little bit sticky on depending, what experience it is that you have. You can put down that you were a contractor. There's a lot of different ways that you can include that in the experience section. But typically that professional summary and then the 9 to 12 bullets right at the top will do most of that work for you.
Great. Sherrie, did you have anything else?
Just to support what was just said, completely and totally agree. If you've done extensive research on the company that you're interviewing with, and most importantly, the specific role that you're going after, you are going to be able to include in your resume information that is going to make you appealing for that specific role. So tailoring it to that position, also knowing who it is that you're going to interview with. I don't think you have to have 50 different resumes out there, excuse me, but I do think that if you're interviewing with HR, you might want to have an HR slant. If you're interviewing with operations, you might have a little bit more of an operational slant to the information. But as long as you've done your homework up front and know what the nuances of the role is that you're going after, you're going to be able to tailor your resume for it.
Okay, you just said something interesting. What would be the difference, at least in the examples you just gave, between like an HR slant versus, say, an operational slant?
Great question. And of course, as an HR professional, I was looking for people. If I was interviewing somebody for an operational role, I wanted to know what that skill set was. But it was always very appealing to me if somebody was talking about their leadership around leading a great culture, or their leadership around being able to really develop direct reports. As an HR professional, that was extremely attractive to me. My operational partners were very excited to hear about efficiencies that people were able to bring to the table. It's just natural that the person that you're interviewing with, depending on what their expertise is, if you share some of that, it's just going to be appealing. It's just human nature.
Mm-hmm. So even if you're actually applying for an operational role, you're still saying if you just have a little bit about, say, leadership or just kind of how you are overall helping build a culture, that's just going to pique their just humanly speaking because of the position an HR person plays, that gets them to be a little bit more interested in hearing what you have to say.
So for example, if I was looking for a logistics manager inside of a Target store, and if the person was able to present all kinds of efficiencies and knowledge around supply chain, those are critical basic expectations, kind of like the price of admission. But if the person was also able to express that while running a very large team, they were able to do it with a fantastic culture, that they wove recognition in through their day in, day out practices, that development was something that turned them on. They loved to get their direct reports promoted. Those were very attractive qualities, not only for the operational pieces of the job, but just the overall culture that was needed for that role.
Oh, love it. That's great stuff. Trisha, I didn't mean to cut you off if you were about to jump in there.
Oh no, I was going to say, I think that we're all trying to talk about how is it you're standing out and how are you being attractive to wherever you are going to be, whether you're working with a client or whether you're interviewing for a position. Again, you're in a sea of other individuals, and how are you going to stand out? So just what Sherrie and Hillary are saying, doing your homework is key. Making sure that you know the language that they're saying, that if they're saying this is what we're looking for and you have a great story to match that or that exceeds those expectations, why wouldn't you share that? So really customizing it, as Sherrie was saying, customizing it to the position or to the contract or whatever it is that you're going after.
Well, speaking of just being yourself, what I think when people think of personal brand, I think they think of just headshots and maybe their LinkedIn profile. But yeah. So true. When I talk to people, I'm like, oh, it's just my headshot, right? Maybe updating my LinkedIn profile. That's it, right? That's all I gotta do for personal brand. I'm like, okay.
Oh my goodness, that is so surface level.
Yes. So I wanted to dig in a little bit about that because there are a lot of people who truly have that. They may even get as far as like, okay, maybe my clothes too, right? We're going to change some of my clothes. I'm like, great. That's the last thing you're worried about. That's not even where we're starting. So can we talk a little bit about that perception and how wrong it is?
Yes.
I'm just going to call it out for what it is, how wrong it is.
I share honestly, Pearl, that building a brand is not going to happen overnight. It is so much self-discovery and self-reflection and figuring out why you were put on this earth, like what drives you, right? And then going into those pillars, because we all have core values. We all have something that we stand for. And I think you know, and actually, ladies, I heard this at Startup Week. I've shared this before, that a woman came up to me and she said, "You are like authentic with a touch of badass." Yes! Oh my God, I'm so excited. And that, honestly, I've shared, has paved the way for my brand. And I don't have to tell you I'm authentic. I show up authentically every time. So everyone's like, "You're the most authentic girl I know." Awesome. Then I must be doing something right in my brand if that's how you view me and I didn't even have to say anything. Right? So it really is, what is the one thing that you want people to know you as? Are you compassionate? Are you loving? Are you, what is it? And then that's how you show up. And then from there, I think involving your passions, because like I said, I love dogs, I've got pugs, I love Zumba class. Like those are things that just make up my life, my everyday life. I'm not ashamed of them. I'm not embarrassed of them. If anything, they make me who I am. So including all these things, figuring out what your personality is. I mean, I've asked people, what should my personal brand be? And I laugh, I share this in one of my talks. I have people that are like, you should always show up in a suit. I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't like suits. I don't like the iron. I am a steam kind of girl. Like I don't. And then, I mean, I burned some shirts before. So I say that, I was like, I would never wear that. And then on the other side, I've gone to other, everybody is going to speak into your brand. Everybody's going to tell you what they think you should be. And you really just got to clear the noise and say, this is who I am. This is me. This is what I want to bring to the table. And, on the flip side, I had a gentleman friend of mine tell me that I should wear like really form-fitting outfits and like high heels. And I'm like,
oh no,
heck no, I'm not wearing that either. And you just kind of put the noise out. And when I finally decided, and you guys have seen this, you've seen me at Phoenix Startup Week, I am like jeans, Converse, just comfy, bring it. And what I was conveying with my brand is down to earth, approachable, come talk to me. I want to help you. I'm invested in your success. I just want you to get there. I want you to get out of your own way and get there, and make that happen. And so it's taken a long time. And then it's not just figuring out who you are, but then it's putting it out there if that's who you are, and letting other people see that's who you are, and continuously putting content, whether that's photos, videos, text, whatever it is, your stories, your personal stories out there, is really how people start to understand what your brand is. I'm attracted by tribe. I'm not going out and chasing them. There are already people that see me, like me, trust me, and that's how I'm starting to attract that business.
That's awesome. Hillary, Sherrie, anything else you want to add?
I just want to say I would hire any and all of you if I was still in the capacity to be doing that. What a dynamic group.
I agree.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I already feel like I did my part because I brought you all together. So clearly, I have great love for all of you.
You've got a wild career in recruiting if you want, Pearl.
Well, but see, that's part of my personal brand. We're talking about personal brand. I'm very relational, which is funny because I'm an introvert, which throws everyone off. It drives people nuts when they say I'm an introvert. I'm like, you just have to understand what an introvert is. It just means I have to go by myself and be trust. But it doesn't mean I'm a shy. I can't be, by the way. If you put me in a mixer, you will see the shy introvert come out quick. But I'm very relational. I love building relationships. I love to learn. I am a junkie. If I could be a student and get paid millions of dollars to do it, perfect job ever. So happy. But I take that desire to learn and I apply it to learning about people and understanding who they are. So because of that, I tend to attract a very diverse group of individuals to me because I'm not really trying to judge you. I'm just trying to understand you, see how I can be of help to you. And then I'm creative, so how my brain works is not necessarily the norm. I don't necessarily see the world. So and I'm very purposeful. So like if some people might notice I have 2 different earrings on, it's very purposeful to show just a hint of, hey, there's a creative mind behind this. And so I absolutely agree with you. Like, and the funny thing is, I started this on accident. The 2 earrings, wearing the 2 different earrings, I lose things a lot. I kept losing my earrings, and they would be my favorites. And I'm like, well, you know what? Just because I lost one doesn't mean I can't wear the other. So that was literally my whole thinking process, and that's how that got born. And now I'm known for it. So that's why I tell people, and it's very much interested in all of you are saying, you have to know yourself, which takes time. I'm hearing a lot of words, research, do the work. So it takes time. And sometimes I wonder if people don't want to do that work. So are there some, I don't want to say shortcuts, but are there some, like, how do we slice it? Because we live in a very fast-paced world where, people have a hard time sitting down and doing the work. So how do we help motivate them to do the work?
I can jump in on this one. I think that it's an absolutely critical piece for preparing for an interview. And, I can kind of parallel it to when you were in school and you were prepping for a final exam. You would do what you needed to do to make sure that you were going to be able to put your best foot forward. So a couple of tips. You need to be able to do an introduction. Prepare your elevator speech. So be prepared to respond to, who are you? Tell me a little bit about yourself. You need to be prepared to speak to your strengths and weaknesses. And as we have talked a lot, you have to be genuine about it. And it's always a little scary to talk about your weakness. But if you talk about your weakness and then talk about what you're doing to mitigate that weakness, you're going to be fine. So for example, if you said, public speaking isn't my strong suit, but I asked my last boss to put me in charge of leading many large group discussions so that I could get more comfortable with it and sharpen my skills. You're being honest, you're being genuine. You're also letting somebody know that if the core role of that job is public speaking, it's probably not going to be a great match. You don't want to be in that job. They don't want you to be in that job. But they're also going to be very appreciative of you being honest. And if that's not a core role, then you're going to be just fine. Also, you have to come up with what I kind of call the meat of your story. So coming up with about probably a minimum of 6 stories where you can talk about the specific situation, what it is that you did about that situation, and what the great outcome is. I call it the SBO model: situation, behavior, and outcome. If you do the work up front to prepare those stories, and you don't want to sound rehearsed, you don't want to sound canned, but you want to be familiar with the accomplishments that you've made, whether it was while you were in school or in a previous role or an interaction with a friend. You want to make sure that you've got those stories well crafted. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you've done the pre-work up front. Getting that dream job is important and well worth the effort of doing all of that pre-work. I can't stress that enough.
Ladies, anything else?
I agree, Sherrie. I think that putting in the time up front is really going to pay off very well, tenfold or more over when you do land that dream job. But if you are looking for some ways to make it easier, working with a partner it always makes things easier, whether they're applying for a different role or it's one of us here on the call. Just practicing with somebody and having that either cheerleader or accountability partner, however it is that you view that person, can really go a long ways. And as it specifically relates to resumes, have somebody proofread your resume so that it's not just you stressing about, did I get everything in there? Is this appealing to somebody else? It's hard for us to be objective about ourselves. So whether it's a parent, it's a family member, a friend, a colleague, having that one other partner to help you with some of this work is really good thing.
Couldn't agree with you more. And there are a couple of tricks out there. Everybody's probably familiar with a platform called Zoom. You can record yourself and you can watch yourself, or you can send it to somebody and have them evaluate you. It's very, very important to practice. I can't agree with you more.
I was also going to add, just with what Hillary had said, accountability is huge. So many people set these goals or they don't give themselves a deadline, and it's like it might as well not even happen. So making sure that you set deadlines for yourself, tell someone so that they can put it on their calendar. That was the best thing that someone did for me when I was writing my book. She put it on her calendar, screenshotted it to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get on this or I'm going to miss the deadline. That's huge. It's huge when someone's holding you accountable and can show up as a mentor and can teach you a thing or two, or just look at what you've done and be able to give you some positive feedback, some ideas on how to make it better.
Well, I definitely have to agree with you ladies about accountability and sharing that information with others. As we all know, I'm an event planner. People are still amazingly looking for us towards the fall. And I just put a proposal out there. And this time I decided to do something different, created it, and then I actually sent it out to my dad, who I love, because he does not sugarcoat anything. And he is an executive for Intel. So he deals with that world, seeing proposals. My brother and another gentleman, but basically key people who I knew would give me great feedback. And so the original proposal and what came out of their feedback were night and day, but that got me to the next level. And that was a growth process for me, because usually I'm going to write it by myself, do it myself, and send it in. But this time I was like, I really want this client. And so if I want this client, I need to do what I need to do to make it happen. Part of that was just being honest and humble enough to go, look at this, and give me the feedback, and me being open to actually hearing, receiving, and applying that feedback.
Sure.
And that's hard. That's why I'm telling you, it's a growth process for me. So if that's not where you're at, don't beat yourself up yet. Just keep growing, keep getting better. And pick one person that you trust that will give you that great feedback that you'd be able to receive. And that's where I started, and now it's grown. And so I love everything that I'm hearing here. I love just talking about your story, because it all works together with everything you're talking about. I'm scrolling through my questions here. I was taking notes and scrolling. I'm like, oh, I lost my next question. Who's for you, Michelle? Oh, how important is it to have a personal brand? When we talk about it, we're building it. People have a brand, whether they're conscious or not of it. So it's not that you don't have one. You actually do, whether you thought about it. How important is it to be conscious of that brand?
I think every person, like you said, subconsciously you're like, I have a brand, but everybody has a brand. However you put yourself out there, it's how the world is perceiving you too. So make sure there's no drunken photos of you in Las Vegas hanging out on the internet, really protect your brand. Your reputation is everything. It doesn't matter if you're in business or if you're working for someone, reputation is huge. And I think what I share, why I was really, honestly, very scared about developing a business under my name, because I was so wanting to hide behind the entity. So when my business coach at the time said, why don't you put it under your name? It took me like 4 months just to get over that idea. And I laugh now, but it was actually the most brilliant thing she told me. And I highly recommend it for anybody, even if you're a college grad or whatever, to really own your domain name, because then you can point it to different places. Because what's going to happen if I'm, for instance, interviewing you, where am I going to look? I'm going to go online. I'm going to see what's going on. Before I even reach out to you, I'm going to see what type of person you are. And if it's pointed to a site where you're talking about the good things you're doing in the community, what lights your soul on fire, what you're passionate about, here's a picture of you and your dogs, I'm going to be like, I really know that person before that person even steps into this interview or steps into this meeting, the Zoom meeting, or whatever we're having. So when I say personal brand, it's so important that each and every one of us know that we are our own brand. We're unique to ourselves, we're authentic, and that's what we put out into the world. And as a business owner, to me, the beauty of having your business really as a personal brand is if you're anything like me, where you can't make up your mind on what you like and what you don't like, you're able to pivot underneath. But the one thing that I tell people is I'm not pigeonholed into, I have a marketing company. Well, I hate marketing and I don't want to do it anymore, but that's what I do. Like, I can say I did marketing and now I've moved on to something else because my business has evolved and I figured out that I love doing personal branding for people instead of just straight up marketing, social media, whatever. So it's allowed me to be more versatile and to take more risks and to explore more things that I enjoy doing and to really keep challenging myself.
Tisha, can I share one more story about personal brand?
Absolutely.
Tisha, you just took me back to the situation. There was this extremely qualified, talented leader that we were bringing aboard to run an area in our stores. And unbeknownst to her, a friend had tagged her on social media at a bachelorette party. And it was provocative, and she didn't even realize that it was there. Well, you know, the person that's doing your interview isn't the only person that's going on social media looking you up. So somebody who was going to be potentially one of her direct reports found it, was offended by it, reported it, and we had to make other arrangements. We had already extended a job offer to her, and we had to move locations because she would have started on the wrong foot. And it really wasn't who she was. It was a one-time occurrence, but this person that was going to report to her didn't know that. So it could have derailed her. She was lucky that we were very creative in trying to find another option for her. So I can't agree with you more about being careful about what is out there, even if you haven't posted it. If you're tagged, my goodness, make sure that you get that taken care of.
Sure. Yeah. It's a
Well,
good
you said
story.
something very key, Tisha. It is, because you said something about protecting your brand. And part of protecting your brand is owning it, realizing that you have one and that you want it to be protected. I work with a lot of younger people, and you know, they live in the digital world, and so they're posting all these things right now, not thinking in the future and how this affects them in the future. And I tell them it's digital. They're like, well, it's only for 24 hours. It's Snapchat or it's TikTok. Or I'm like, no, it's digital. It lives on forever. So if you do not, I know it's hard for you at 15 right now to even imagine a 25-year-old version of yourself. But trust me, a 25-year-old version of yourself is going to kick your 15-year-olds behind if you post it. Don't do it, because it doesn't go away, whether you think it does or not. We are about to our last 10 minutes. So Hillary, I want to throw this in just because I know people, LinkedIn, as far as professional world, that's where a lot of people are going. And there's your resume. Are those two things the same? Are they different? I'm one of those people that right now my LinkedIn basically is a digital version of my resume. Probably shouldn't be. What should it be more like?
Well, there's a couple points rolled into that one question there, but you know, as we were just having this conversation about protecting your brand online, one question that I'm asked pretty frequently is, should I have a LinkedIn? You know, how important is LinkedIn? And these are some of the examples that I will come back with, is that LinkedIn is that social media platform that you can build and construct that puts your professional foot forward. It's not Facebook, it's not Instagram, right? But it is still a social media platform. So when you Google a person's name, the first things to ever pop up are social media accounts, and LinkedIn is still a social media account. So I do think it's strongly suggested that you build yourself a LinkedIn that you can create and put together. Now, whether or not it should be the same as your resume, there's a couple different schools of thought there. Some people will tell you, yes, that it is your online resume. I personally view it as a place where you can put your personal brand with it. So it shouldn't just be a copy of your resume. It should complement your resume. It's an additional piece that an employer can see about you. So you can kind of pick and choose some of the information that you want on there. It should have your professional experience, but it should be about who you are too. I don't have a picture of my dogs. I have a comment about my dogs in my about statement on my LinkedIn profile. I don't put that on my resume. So, it just kind of gives you that personal edge there to be able to be used.
Absolutely. Sherrie, any additional thoughts?
I just think LinkedIn is a very important tool, and I would recommend that that you have a posting that you're proud of.
I would say the same thing. I mean, I love LinkedIn over every platform out there. I have found that it really is a great way to build a personal brand, whether you are seeking a job or you are an entrepreneur. There's several entrepreneurs on there. I love a lot of the features that I can continuously add things to that resume, and it gets I'm a professional speaker. I love speaking. So being able to share that I'm speaking here and the keynote here, what is that doing? It's just building that exposure that that's what I do, and more opportunities are flowing in that way. So it's great to be able to generate, new leads and new prospects that way. The other thing is I love that they have that Pulse articles. Like it's like your blog, but it lives on forever. It lives there. And when someone reads it, and then someone reads it 6 months from now, it just goes right back up to the top. So there's some really great features. Of course, they've got the video component, even the LinkedIn Live component. So if you're trying to showcase who you are and your personality, it definitely is the right platform for building your business or your reputation on a professional level.
Yeah, and just building onto that, Tisha, where you mentioned the video, I do think that that's the way that resumes are going to move in the future. I'm not saying in the next 6 months, but we are going to be, requiring a little bit more of an interactive type profile for resumes. The way that we're operating right now is a bit antiquated. So I think it's important to at least start practicing with that so that you're comfortable with the video and communication that way about yourself.
And when you're doing
that, videos.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Sherrie.
Well, I was just going to add, as we...
I'm going to ask another question.
I was just going to add that as we're starting to record, make sure that you're aware of your surroundings. What does your background look like? There are all kinds of tutorials, whether it's on Zoom or on YouTube. There's even advice regarding makeup and clothing and how you can look your best on camera. And I can't stress enough making sure that you've got all of your devices turned off. I have an Apple Watch. I adore my Apple Watch. You have to take it off. If there's an alert or a text that comes in, you may not look at it, but it's going to distract you and you could be in the middle of a very important thought. So whether you're recording a resume or whether you're in the middle of an interview process, turn your devices off, take your watch off.
Mm-hmm. Well, perfect. You actually answered part of my next question is we're doing a lot more digital interviews, right? And so what are key things that you should be thinking about? So you already talked about your background, you talked about your devices, anything else that people should be thinking about, whether it's their clothing, their makeup, just even positioning of their camera. I know when we were having our dry run, I was like, hey, look at your camera when you're talking so that the audience knows that you're talking to them versus at your screen, because I'm the same way. I love looking at my screen, and I do that when you're talking. So it means I feel like I'm looking at you. But when you're speaking, looking at the camera, any other tips that people should be thinking about?
There's a couple of things. If you are interviewing in person, make sure you've got a couple of extra copies of your resume with you. Just because somebody's interviewing you doesn't mean that they necessarily have all of your information handy. They should, but they might not. You also want to make sure that if you're pulling your resume out of a portfolio, that it's clean, it's neat, that a bunch of gum wrappers aren't going to fly out of your bag when you pull it out. If you're interviewing over the phone, it's really interesting how your voice sounds different when you have a smile on your face.
Mm-hmm.
And no, they can't see you if it's just over the phone, although I think that phone interviewing is probably a little bit more unusual these days. But if you practice talking with a smile on your face, or you practice talking without a smile on your face, it sounds different. It just does. So I would encourage that. I would also have an attractive notepad to take notes on. I would do whatever you can to make sure that your personal brand looks great.
Here's a little comical. Do not wear green if you're in front of a green screen. I'm just saying, that's a good tip.
Yes.
Good to know. I didn't know that.
Well, and here's the thing. I just have to share this. I was on a Zoom call with a woman out of Chicago, and we're collaborating on some things. And you know how Zoom, everybody's using the virtual background, right? But unless it's set up the right way, you're coming in and out. Like you're not just a solid figure. Here's just the funny story real quick. She was feeding her baby. Like we're just having a conversation and her baby kept disappearing into the background. And she had it was outer space in the background. And I'm like, do you have your baby on your lap? Because I can't tell. It's like in and out, and your kids keep coming in and out. And I'm like, I'm so confused right now. And she's like, yeah, it's sitting with me. I'm like, okay. So I highly recommend that if you're going to test it out, all these cool backgrounds, test it out, like we were talking about, get in front of someone else that can say it's not really working for you. Get rid of it. Get in front of a solid background. Don't try all of these fancy techniques when you're right in your dream job interview.
Right. Also, right now, you could be at home with your significant other, with your kids, obviously, with your pets. So try to be uninterruptible. We did a little bit of a dry run a couple of days ago, and my husband came out. Actually, that wall behind us, there's a hidden room behind there, and he was supposed to stay in that room. And all of a sudden, you saw the wall come forward and probably saw a little bit more of my husband than you needed to. Yes, it was funny, but it wouldn't have been funny if it would have been my dream job interview. So be aware of not being interruptible.
It's great advice.
Oh my gosh, love it. Hillary?
I'm going to just, echo what they were saying. I guess showing up on time is also really critical. So if you're not familiar with the technology, take some time to make sure it's downloaded, you have the app, and doing all the testing that these two have been sharing as well. But making sure that when that interview is scheduled to start at 10 a.m., that you're ready to go at 9:59 or earlier.
That is all fantastic. I think that's a great way for us to wrap up our time together. Ladies, thank you so much for being on the call. On the call. I guess I need to say that. On our panel discussion, let me call it correct. Very much appreciate it. It's definitely been an honor to chat with you all. I get a lot of great information. We will be emailing you if you want to chat specifically with Hillary or Tisha or Sherrie. They've all been gracious to set some opportunities for you to be able to spend some additional time with them. So please take advantage of that. I hope you can tell that they already have a lot of great knowledge. Feel free to also follow up with me. I love it. I'm like Tisha, where I do too many things. And so my resume, I feel bad for recruiters. They're like, have you really done this? I'm like, yeah, I have. I've moved on, but yes, I have. So I love to bring people together and have these discussion styles. So be on the lookout. That email will go out at the end of the day, and we'll actually have this on replay. So if people want to watch it again, please feel free to do so. See, any last thoughts I want to give out? All right, one last thing, just one last final thought you want to give and then that will be the end. So Hillary, go.
Proofread your resume. That's my last and final thought to leave you with. It's so important. It can really make or break the difference of whether or not you get the opportunity for an interview. So find a friend, read it 10 times. If it's good, read it one more time.
Fantastic. Tisha.
You are an original, so be an original and show up as you and not anybody else, just you. That's it.
Awesome. I love it. Proofread, which is very important. I have read something 5 times and missed something each time. And then being original, you live in a very social world. And in the end, it's really about connecting with people. So Sherrie.
Remember what makes you great and what strengths you have that are the perfect match for your dream job.
Oh, love that. That's a great way to end. I will give, if you're a reader, I will give you one book. My favorite book to read is Strength Finders, going along with what Sherrie, because it was the first time where someone was talking about here are finding your strengths. Not just important to know your weaknesses. This is the first time someone's focusing on here are my strengths. I highly suggest that. I hope this was very useful to you all. Thank you so much for being here. And I just wish you all a fabulous Friday. Today is Friday. And a great start to May. We're in a new month, everyone. Welcome to May. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Ladies.